Do they have pop filters specifically built for
Ad-libs?
for that style of ad-lib?
No. I think all pop filters kind of work the same way, but it's a good idea for a product. You could just like heavily market as a specialty thing, you know, be like $200 ad-lib pop filter.
It's kind of like
used by Waka Flocka.
Pop Smoke pop filter.
It's like they sell high-end cables, right? Even though they're like the basic physics of it mean every cable is the same.
Well, there's like a shielding for cables that actually does end up being pretty important.
Like the insulation is better for some of them. And like,
that's where the money is. But like some cables are just like, oh, we're gold-plated like connectors, which really don't do anything. They just look cool.
The aesthetic.
Yeah. All my USB-C cables are gold-plated.
It's Alex!
It's episode 214, A View from 202. And lo and behold, last week we were like, maybe we'll have a happy thing to talk about. It'll be more upbeat again. Here we go. Here we are. I guess we're falling into a pattern of some sort. I don't know if it's exactly every other, but we're on the wake of a pretty good win over Toronto FC at home. And we're looking forward to two big matches in this upcoming week. Wednesday, the Open Cup tie against NYCFC, and Sunday against LAFC. That's away from home. But realistically,
both of the local foot clubs of our most big cities,
largest cities. Yeah.
But yeah, the mom and pop football clubs of each of them.
I know,
are doing this grand tour.
I feel like Tom Hanks and You've Got Mail. I'm just the scion, the perfect example of 90s ruthless capitalism, modern football / book selling, tearing out the humble small bookstores and football clubs across our country. This is our week.
You can only beat who's in front of you.
Exactly.
It's gonna hurt, but
yeah. Realistically, though, I anticipate we'll be talking mostly about Wednesday's match, and Sunday's match will probably just be +1 to everything we say about Wednesday, because that's the real focus here. We're also recording this on Monday, so hopefully we'll get this out Tuesday morning, and we'll have a whole 36 hours before kickoff. That's our hope. But first things first, Toronto FC 2-0 on the weekend. The boys showed up. The people of the tri-state area showed up for Topps trading card night. That was the real key. I, of course, by tradition, was late, so I didn't get my Topps trading cards.
Oh, you didn't?
Did anybody
No.
get?
Paige has got some.
I did. There's somewhere.
Where are they?
Somewhere. I mean, you might get to this, but the issue with them is that I think everyone got the same 4 cards with the same 4 players.
I got mine straight from the plug, but I unfortunately, sorry, comms department, I haven't gotten a chance to open them yet.
Yeah.
But they are all the same ones in every single pack.
I did a pack opening at my seat, like they do Pokemon trading cards.
Sure.
But they were they're like, you could see a player on each pack in the front, and then they were just the only players I saw at the desk table anyway, so I'm just assuming everyone got the same ones.
What players were there?
Tolkien, Yearwood, was it CCJ maybe?
I think so. That sounds right.
Yeah.
And Morgan?
Maybe. Something like that. But, like, crowd favorites, but I agree. Like, I wish there was like one, like, when you open a pack of cards, you get a rare card, right? In the pack, and then you get like a bunch of common cards.
Yeah,
like
I want an Andreas Ivan throwback card.
Right, but that's the common card. Like that's the ones we want. But like,
or even just the active squad. I sincerely thought it would have been sort of neat if they actually had
like a Zach Ryan
30 cards and randomized it, and if anyone is equipped to do such a thing, it would be the Topps trading card company.
That's what I assumed the whole deal was with the night.
And then I'd want to go trade with my other fans for like the cards I had.
They had like some sort of event in the beer garden before that
thing, yeah.
Right. And I figured that would have been, pretty intuitive thing to pull off.
You have to do all of the event marketing for the league.
It's still a pretty cool gig that looked like it was pretty successful.
Sports thing, yeah. At the very
looks like it did its job of bringing people out.
In this instance, I'm just disappointed in Topps, right? You'd think Topps would have this concept down pat.
I did see. I mean, they went pretty all out on it. Tops, my former corporate neighbor. I used to work across the street from a building that they were on the front of in college. But anyway, they had like all their like media and marketing. Like they had like an interview video thing with John Tolkien that was going around where like they put all of their like media organs to work for it, but then they were like, in some of them they were calling it like New York Red Bulls defenseman John Tolkien. Not to be that guy nitpicking about soccer knowledge, but still.
Topps probably, I guess, just in Europe, Panini kind of just had more of a thing on that or more of a handle on that sort of collectible tradable market, maybe less so than the cards. So maybe that might be the main reason that they never really got a hold of it. I don't know.
There's the kind of like cadence of World Cups for Panini too, where I feel like people are like, oh yeah, this is the big time to really get a Panini book of stickers.
Well, right, that's what I mean, which is probably why Topps and what's Upper Deck is mostly baseball. I mean, I guess both of them are mostly baseball. Probably just didn't do it because they thought that it was already inundated. Does Topps should make a series of cards for every CUNY campus, so that way you can trade Hunter and then with your Brooklyn colleges, and
that's
then,
right.
Yeah,
I was gonna say they should make a trading card game where they have 11 players and you play other people with their 11.
No.
Except if they did that CUNY series, it would be most likely they would do their promo events at the new City Modular Stadium on Randall's Island, which is where Hunter plays currently.
Yeah. And then you just keep every pack you get. It's just Baruch over and over again.
Yeah,
every time.
Yeah, I mean, I got to do my lobbying to make sure Hunter doesn't participate in any sort of facilitating of City's new ground. But we'll see what happens.
Mayor Adams has actually just announced that CUNY, in order to raise funds, is participating in Socios. You can buy an NFT for a small portion of the CUNY system that entitles you to personally lay off one of the faculty.
I wish that was more far-fetched than it is.
You don't think he would go private university for that and do like, this is a ground share with Fordham Lincoln Center campus?
Yeah.
No, it's all about privatizing the remaining scraps of the public system. Obviously, that's key. But anyway, yeah, I thought the Topps thing I mean, honestly, even though they only had 4 of the players, I like that it was just a soccer thing at a soccer match. That was a step up,
Was it a soccer thing though?
Yeah, there's soccer cards.
Yeah. Like soccer cards aren't really a thing though.
Yeah, but sports cards are Topps. Yeah. It's sports. It's not fucking Star Wars,
Marvel.
Right. It's just, so yeah, I would have loved to have a Carlos Rivas card. Would have loved to have a Dilly Duca card. But, maybe we'll have another Topps promo in a couple weeks where they give out those, or
maybe we'll just start a 202 card company that randomly becomes a media empire.
Right.
We'll see what happens.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
I got a holographic Roy Rogers card.
Yeah.
I got a fucking slightly off-center John Galt Wade.
Oh, man. Check out this Cracker Barrel waiting room card.
Oh, my God, guys. Fuck. I got Bearded Reyes. Yeah, keep an eye out for that. Publishing this podcast means that all of those ideas have been copyrighted. So you've been warned. But not only was it Topps night or whatever, it was a big old win. We topped Toronto FC, if you will, 2-0. And I gotta say, I don't know, probably the best game of the year, maybe. I'll say it. I'll suggest that. Anyone disagree? Anyone agree?
Was it better than the DC game?
Yeah.
Well, I will say both it and the DC games. I mean, this is like the DC game in which it was against a lower league side.
Yeah.
I mean, Canadian Premier League team. It's come a long ways, but it still is what it is.
I did make a joke during the game, like, oh, it's funny that we're playing a CPL team midweek or like in the middle of the season. But yeah, it was like we're clearly better than them, but it was also like a little frustrating that we generated so many chances and came out with a 2-0 result almost.
I will say fucking Klimala.
Yeah, I didn't fucking see him anywhere. Toronto, I think, resembled a lower half side, whereas DC is more like actually like felt amateur
from
to me.
from another division.
Yeah, Toronto actually did seem like they were a bad team, but in our same league, and not for
well coached and drilled, like,
and the
had
players
a bit of,
cared about it a
they had
little
a bit
bit.
of passion, even though it was a
Right.
bit misplaced, to say the least, particularly with Salcedo and then later Bradley. But then, we also had moments in the first half in particular, where Nelson for them was giving us a decent bit of trouble. Got within a foot of our far post twice, had a bit of pace, and it wasn't our cleanest half, the first half, that we've played all season. But, it's a tricky game. This is why you play the games instead of just simulating it in FM, because sometimes you play a little bit dirtier, but you still get out of it clean. We've given up cheaper goals, despite playing better before, like against Charlotte just last week, or say against Minnesota. I think we played better defensively against Minnesota the whole time, but we still conceded 2 goals. But lo and behold, we were still able to keep our focus and get through the half. And I think really assert ourselves in the second half. And like I said, the last 15 minutes in particular just felt like what we on this podcast really look for, really celebrate, I think, is when we're really just grinding down a team and simultaneously sort of burning the clock, but also still just parking in their third and presenting a threat, which I really like to see, instead of just sort of doing squeaky bum time until the final whistle.
There wasn't, Toronto wasn't, I mean, they did come, like you said, come in waves kind of in sort of the second half of the first half. But then, unlike a lot of second halves we've seen where in games where we've largely controlled at the arena, unlike those games, we did not see the opposing team start to have these waves of counterattacks against us, circling it around, putting them under siege. This time, whatever, the pressing structures were stopping them from having those outlet passes and stopping them from using their pace. And it allowed us to save our energy, which obviously is important after the last month and going into this summer. And just clearly, the best managed game, the best kind of, full 90 minutes that we've put together all year, and it's a good time to get yourself in that mindset. And like I like you just said, Brit, and I kind of wrote up in OAM yesterday, the sort of passion that seemed to come out in this game. Toronto seemed to take it real seriously, even though there hasn't really been a rivalry per se between these clubs, maybe ever, but certainly not since that sort of 2017, 2018 era where we were both kind of on the top of the conference. Kind of felt like a sort of top of conference rivalry sort of game where both teams were really kind of stuck in and going for it, and running hard and cared, as Peaches put it. And going into a game against City at the midweek, getting some of your heavy hitters back that you weren't able to necessarily use in this game. It's a pretty good, momentum to be on. So we'll see where it carries.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I think Toronto, among the sort of core 4 veterans on their squad that we sort of picked out last week, sort of in a lighthearted manner, just point out how funny it is that they're sort of split between super youth and super old. But that core 4 of Bradley, Osorio, Pozuelo, and Salcedo now, I think, did at least make it so they didn't just totally have no investment in the match. Salcedo in particular, God, he just got here, and I don't know what he's so fucking turnt about, or why these basic throw-in calls are making him so mad. But he was absolutely lost control, which I guess is sort of a throwback to last season where it felt like every center back pairing that came to Red Bull Arena was losing their goddamn minds. Even when they weren't necessarily losing, they were just furious for some reason. I mean, there were a couple fouls, I guess, or borderline fouls in the first half, but it just reached a point where he'd get a throw-in call against him and he'd just be screaming at the linesman the whole time, to the point where it's like, all right, if that's not a former senior international, that guy's fucking gone. Like, he does not get away with that. I mean, he got one yellow, but it was just a little absurd.
We should get Dylan Nealis to start doing that.
Well, Nealis is... yeah. Nealis has as I've said before, it's funny. He's like almost the exact opposite, where he mouths off just enough to register maybe getting a yellow, but doesn't really go all out. So, but I say it worked out pretty well that Harper, I think, came on. It was Harper, right, who came on, and it was they were both going for the ball in the second half, but it was definitely a yellow when he clattered the shit out of Salcedo, and it was kind of like a perfect situation where it's like, yeah, it's like a substitute player, we're getting yellows, not a big deal, end of the game. But then Salcedo was just fucking dead for the rest. He was laying on the ground for 10 minutes, didn't say another word, subbed out of the game while he just laid on the pitch. And it was a little bit like, all right, well, your night's over. You've said your piece, which I sort of enjoyed a bit, because I don't understand what even was the cause of that big dust up that got people shoving around and Bradley screaming at it. I mean, were you able to get a sense of that?
That was that Struber thought that Morgan got elbowed by Salcedo. And, it seemed at the time that Struber, because they were, they were right in front of Struber's technical area, that Struber was yelling for a card. And Salcedo, heard that and started walking over and starting shit. And then Bradley came over with him, and just little. I probably need to follow up with the club that whether or not Struber got a yellow or anything is part of that, because remember last year it sort of snuck up on us that one game where Struber was suspended. Or actually, that might have been earlier this year, wasn't it? Maybe, I can't remember. Whatever game that Eibler coached. But anyway, I think in a more even kind of technical level on the physicality and the refereeing, and we talked about this when I was sitting with you guys for part of the game the other night, that it seems I haven't watched enough of the rest of the league to know if this is a pattern league wide, but it seems like you're really not allowed to make a heavy aerial challenge anymore. It feels like every 50-50 aerial ball gets whistled this year, which sort of hurts us a little bit, because a big part of our game, and we've remarked on it in seasons past, that turn into head tennis, pretty to an extreme extent, but a lot of our game is sort of knocking down and not even winning balls in the air, but at least knocking them to a place that makes the other team uncomfortable to try and possess it and try and chase it. And when just every single one of those plays gets turned into a dead ball, it not only prevents us from getting those opportunities I just mentioned, but it also just cuts down on the tempo. And it's just been something that in the midst of a lot of the other more kind of tit for tat refereeing and bad calls, whatever you want to call it, this year, I feel like that is kind of sneaking underneath too, as something that puts the style that Red Bulls play at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because, well, one, I do think we handled that better this week, and in the last couple of weeks in general, compared to the front half, very beginning of the season, where we were even losing our heads a bit about it. But I think the other part is that this ref and a couple refs recently seem to be content to let them play a little bit more with rougher tackles on the ground. There are a couple times where I was surprised where he let play keep going on. But then conversely, it seems like both teams on the pitch at this point have a little bit better understanding of what's going to get whistled now, where there are a couple calls either way where there was less arguing, I think, from both sides than in previous weeks. So maybe it's one thing where we can't see it from the stands as well, because maybe they're just getting real strict about having your arms separate from your torso at all, and that's the big thing that they're harping on for some reason. But it almost seems like we in particular, and to a lesser extent Toronto as well this week, seemed to be more intentionally like holding off on some of the aerial challenges and more intentionally playing the second balls, which maybe the teams around the league have all sort of gotten the briefing that this is what the new call is, and everyone's sort of trying to adapt to it. I think we seem to adapt to it particularly well this week. Didn't get whistled for as many fouls, and Amaya and Cáceres in particular just had a monster game. Really locked everything down there.
Yeah, I was really going to say that it's funny you mentioned it this week that, these aerial battles are kind of being called a little softly, where on the other hand, we were winning like every second ball. I felt like throughout this game, where like every time we kind of caused a disruption, we were really able to be in kind of that space in a way that made us feel like the old us again, and that we were kind of like really playing aggressively towards that end. And I really think a lot of it is like, for me, noticeably, was just that CCJ played super aggressively, and he had a bite that I'd never seen him play with. I think really on this team, and just kind of like in Toronto's face without really like exerting any more aggression than he usually does. It just felt like he channeled it in the right ways,
Yeah, and I think he's had some positional clarity for a couple weeks now, which I think helps a lot. I think that also you could also say that about two other players, which is Dylan Nealis and, in a slightly different way, Lewis Morgan. Nealis, I think, took another step forward this week and looked more comfortable and aggressive in that wide position. He played the last 10 minutes as center back, which he did fine enough at. But I think he seems to be growing into that role a little bit. Definitely did not get exposed by Petrasso like he did at the very beginning of the season when we played them up there. Although, to be clear, in that game, it didn't matter. We still beat them 4-1 up there. Or was it 4-0? Either way.
4-1.
And Morgan, I think, had no problem playing further up front and being more of an attacking role. Whether or not you call it a striker, I guess there's some gray area. But I think he's also just been able to play in that sort of role more consistently in the last couple of weeks, in part also because we've sort of committed to Nealis playing out wide there and letting Morgan sort of take on that more front four type role near Luquinhas. So I think everyone really thrived from that sort of continuity that we were really missing for 2 to 3 months, or the first 2 months of the season, for reasons that still elude me. But yeah, that's probably maybe the most pleasing thing about this match as well, is that I think all 11 guys really had a good showing, and it looked like they were able to build individually on what they were doing last week, or the last time they played at least, which was not true a month ago when a couple of guys are playing different roles in different spots for frustrating reasons. I don't know.
Was there a quote from someone who said that we had like kind of a fluid front three and that helped them kind of with that flexibility? Was it Morgan? Yeah.
I mean, the lineup card sort of article that the club puts out listed Omir Fernandez as the front forward, but really it was all three, to a larger extent Lewis Morgan, who were running ahead of play and collecting the entry balls. And, just generally running ahead of the rest of the team. And it ended up being a good kind of gambit from Struber, because he obviously was without Klimala, who was suspended. Fletcher is apparently just not trusted with minutes, whether it's for fitness or tactical reasons. And then Tom Barlow had kids. He had twins born this week, and apparently was out of training a lot and not, fully focused with obvious reasons. So, he ended up going with this instead, and it ended up being a pretty good look. Struber said after the game that he thought that Toronto's center backs were not under enough pressure in the first half. So against the ball, I guess there was a little bit lacking in the way that was structured, but on the other side of the ball, I don't think it was perfect either. The way that the team would break out without a true reference point forward. But I think it was still enough, obviously, to even though the goal wasn't from the run of play, it was still enough to keep DC honest, to have
Toronto.
attacks. Toronto. They had those like almost black and white kits. Or
Yeah.
whatever. But
Keep
yeah,
them honest.
had enough to keep them honest and enough to generate some danger on that side of the field, and be able to structure the rest of the team properly. It ended up working out, and then Struber was able to play the Tom Barlow card in the second half, and it worked to our advantage quite nicely.
Yeah, I felt like we that kind of interchange and interplay that we had at forward allowed us, funnily enough, to play a little bit more progressively, because I feel like usually if you think about kind of like interplay and change, it's like it kind of more lateral in the way that it happens. But
And the team has been pretty static a lot of games this year.
exactly.
Like just a lot of straight line north-south passing instead of guys moving around.
Right. So like it was interesting
More
to see the way
diagonally.
that the diagonals were going, obviously. Yeah. But I couldn't help but notice that Omir Fernandez seemed like he was like a beat quicker than everyone else in the things that he's trying to do. Like his passing link up was a little fast. And to me, that kind of shows not that, Omir's off, or that he's like, like not fulfilling the role. Well, I mean, like to some extent he might not be, because like a lot of the play seemed to die there, but that he was largely doing the right stuff. He was just a little bit early. So instinctively, obviously I think he's been put in the right place. I think he's clear on what to do, and he's doing it. But now, like his next step, and were you talking about his development? Like,
Yeah.
I think his next step is also like reading his own team too, in these sequences. But like,
Or just playing more. Yeah, I think he had in particular playing that overlap ball to the left, either to Tolkien or Luquinhas, or even sometimes Morgan was a beat late, or when they weren't expecting it, or just like a slightly off. And it wasn't the wrong idea, but yeah, to me, not to be sort of on a more sad note, I was sitting there thinking like, yeah, that might just be sort of the product of having his development totally neutered in 2019.
I'll be a little optimistic
2020.
and say that he's just finally getting used to this system.
I mean, it
think,
wasn't bad.
too.
I'm not
exactly.
criticizing it. It was just, yeah, it could have, that was one area that was like not, 10 out of 10 cutting edge, but that was fine. It was still testing Toronto and making them uncomfortable. But I do think that Barlow added something different, and Barlow had a great game, I think. I mean, as I guess Struber chalked it up to newly acquired dad strength, right? Double dad strength. He's now the father of twins. And yeah, just really, I think, looked like he was having a fun time just running in behind Toronto's back line too. And of course, I mean, another instance where he's highly involved in a goal but won't get an assist. And it's like the fourth time that's happened this year, right? I was worried because like we kept on getting offsides in a couple weird moments in this match, and times I didn't even expect. You wouldn't even expect someone to be offside. So when that play for the second goal developed, when he got put in, I was sort of worried it would happen again. But no, he was onside. He stayed on top of the ball well enough, gets in a decent shot. Then, of course, Luquinhas just says, no problem. Easy. He's like, well, if you're going to make... Look, I can just see plain as day. There's uninterrupted space between the ball and the net. All you need to do is just hit it exactly this hard.
Just put it in.
I don't understand. Yeah, this game is easy. I don't understand.
See, Luquinhas even scores tap-ins.
Yeah, exactly. And then rewatching it again, I was like, it's also wild how you can see Westberg, he's getting back in position, but he's getting back in position to sort of just generally,
Patrol the area.
patrol and organize his defense. And then he's like, oh, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then I even at the time I was like, how is this? No way. And then it even hit the net with a nice little plop, and I was like, oh, such a fun sequence.
That kind of like, that's a lot of, I think, why Luquinhas is so successful at scoring is his timing, right? I mean, obviously this was, I think, just kind of instinctual, like whatever you do, but like, we've seen him kind of put the keeper on the wrong foot, and I think a large reason of what, we've seen Klimala not be as prolific in his goal scoring as he could be is maybe, he takes up a lot of time to get the technique right. But,
Well, I don't even know if it's trying to get the technique right. Where I think it might even be a byproduct of last season being such a laborious season. Whereas he spent so much time on this team so far, being sort of a focal point, and I think he's mentally always checking to see if he can facilitate as well, and he doesn't want to be profligate with the ball, which I think takes up that tenth of a second or half of a second, which is the window that Luquinhas strikes in. Because I think Klimala gets on the ball and he's like, okay, and he thinks about his options, and he usually makes a decent decision. Sometimes it's a little late, but I think he's really like, just being sort of thorough. Whereas if he maybe if he gets on the field more with Luquinhas in particular, maybe it'll free up a little bit of
that instinct.
Right.
Yeah, weight on his mind where he can maybe do that. Because I mean, this is sort of the essential, I don't know, like je ne sais quoi of strikers. Some people attribute it to poachers, but really strikers of all types have this if they're elite. It's just sort of that bit of guile or unexpected thing. I mean, BWP had it on his little crossovers.
The nutmeg goals that he had.
Yeah, I mean, like, but also, Ibrahimovic has it in his sort of power striker way. Berbatov has it in a more languid sort of way. Frank Lampard, not a striker, also has that ability to just, or had that ability to strike in just bizarre, unexpected times that wrong foots the opposition. And Luquinhas clearly has that. And my God, he was so sticky on the ball on Saturday and so infectious. Just really had ability to. Sometimes the ball gets stuck at his feet and he always just drags it around with him. And it was putting so much fear in Toronto, and I think made it so the whole team could just be a little bit more aggressive.
He really is the closest thing in a single player that we've had in the, kind of framework of the energy drink era, where the team dominates during the regular season and then obviously has the playoff games where we can't just kind of take hold of things from scratch. And Luquinhas is the single player that comes closest to doing that. I think we've seen, certainly since Henry, where he can just force things into being, can just get on the ball and just force his way around one or two guys, can just get on the ball and, just dink a weird shot or a weird ball into space. And, we'll see, we'll have to wait for the big moments to see if it ends up, sort of manifesting in those moments, but it seems like he's the closest to that sort of, whatever you want to call it, X factor, difference maker, just that kind of player who can just force it. That's been such a big part of his game in all these games over the last month, where he is literally just taking the ball and forcing the opposition to deal with him. And so many games through the years where we've even with good squads where there hasn't been that sort of dynamic when a game is sort of slipping away from us emotionally, tactically, whatever you want to call it. And he is sort of the cheat code against that, as best we've seen in a while.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, say this very vaguely, and, it's kind of a term that goes around, but like as a creative player, I think he's, improvisational in that kind of way of like, he doesn't use necessarily like the best part of like lacing his boot through the ball to get a good shot, and sometimes he'll just hit it in because of the timing and like improvise in that kind of way.
He does have clean technique though.
No, he does. He hits it well, but like it's not like it's not like textbook all the time. It's because he's being creative about it.
He's a Nike X, not a Adidas X, not an Adidas Ace.
Ace, right? Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The cleat dichotomy.
But yeah, I mean, like, but to that point before, is like, I feel like Klimala does like try to do things very right in a lot of ways, and I had an
Klimala is an Adidas X.
Yeah, exactly. I had an analogy.
Adidas Ace.
Right. I had an analogy of like. I'm bringing a first person shooter analogy in because I've been playing a lot of Valorant. But like when you're holding angles and you're defending like a site, right, and you're playing like an FPS game, you often take like the best angle to take is like the long angle, because you'll see the enemy first, but people are expecting you to be at that angle, right? So oftentimes people will take like an odd angle that people won't expect you to be at. And I feel like that's what Luquinhas does.
Well, yeah, just being unpredictable.
It was just like, yeah, it's just like, oh yeah, you just play in a way that it's not going to be expected, rather than playing in the way that is good, because that'll lead to the goals and scoring rather than necessarily like, it's not. And I don't think that the players are doing it for any kind of moral reason, but it's like, there's that kind of feeling a little bit.
Well, there's you need to have a player who, I mean, especially with the way we play that can be so systematic. You need one player who just does something
throws the
unexpected
tempo off,
yeah. And he's certainly that player. And there's been also some comparisons in the discourse over the last couple of days to Kaku, and how he's had sort of the impact that Kaku did in 2018, which ended up being a special year. But from a tactical sense, they're different players, obviously, and like I wrote in OAM a little bit, but even more so in a tactical sense, Kaku's game was more about having little moments and little killer balls and stuff like that, whereas he wasn't as much of a take the ball and just force things into being sort of player, like I just laid out about Luquinhas. And Luquinhas is so much more of that impact over a course of an entire game, just turning the run of play in so many stretches. And I think that factor puts him even a little bit ahead of Kaku as well. And I mean, it remains to be seen where his ceiling is, whether he can just do this, where he, scores a sick goal or just dominates with his dribbling and turns a game every single week. I mean, I guess Charlotte, he had that one moment where he came out of, 4 guys or whatever, but maybe couldn't necessarily do it in that game. But still, I mean, over the course of the last month where we've had 6 or 7 games, there's probably only one of them where he hasn't been, the conversation point at the end of it. So even if he hasn't registered a point.
Someone on Twitter brought up that, Luquinhas is like a 26-year-old who's kind of like done the Europe thing. And
somebody.
I don't remember if it was you or not. I was going to ask if it was you, but, that is a good, like, sweet spot of a player, especially if someone of his, like, gravity in the way that we play and his effectiveness. And, like the comparisons to like a Diego Valeri type might like emerge from him, or like
just the idea that tease out the
longevity feeling.
So you mean like, by 26 he has a bit of experience. He already has played in Europe, but
and he's gonna stick around for a while. He's not just here to be a quick asset.
Or like there's no like writing on the wall where he's like, yeah, we're just building up to right. Move him along. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. And I think on Saturday it also seemed like when we're at our best and when he's involved, I mean, it's nice because he doesn't always have to be on the ball. It's contrast it to say like Sasha Question era, where there were times where we were just sort of cycling it through him and sort of just trying to hope something happened through there. And Luquinhas is not like that. He can go a couple minutes without touching the ball but still have an effect, and it seems like he almost has an intangible effect on the team as well, where they seem a little bit less worried about hitting the ball precisely to the right inch of someone's foot or anything, and play a little bit more loose. And paradoxically, I think this actually can make them hit better passes to each other, just to worry about it a little bit less. And I even think that, maybe his technique and his confidence maybe is just spilled into other players like Frankie. Like Amaya had several of these turns on Saturday where he just really effectively sort of feinted Toronto's midfield into making it look like he was losing control a bit, but then just did a really neat, I think Sass called it like a Xavi turn, and just found space immediately, which seems sort of reminiscent of the way Luquinhas operates in tight space further up the pitch. Obviously, this isn't to say that he's invented that technique, but more, I think, just sort of leading by example and giving confidence in the rest of the guys on the pitch to sort of add that aspect to their game.
CCJ was kind of doing not necessarily like the Xavi turn thing, but he was definitely like playing with confidence in a way where, if he got close to someone who's marking him, then he can get away from them, and he had the confidence to do that a few times throughout that game. I noticed that as well.
CCJ played well to the point where I was sitting there thinking, like, At this point, I mean, we might as well just give him another contract, right? Like, we're not going to, I mean, maybe we still sell him. I don't know. That could be fine. But we're playing him a decent amount now, and he seems to be enjoying a bit of consistency in his role. It'd be sort of annoying if he left now. Maybe we just extend him. Like, I don't know. Let's just keep going with this. It seems like it's going all right. And I think this would have been a good match as well. I mean, I guess Drew was hurt, so it could have been good to get him minutes at the end. But I think also if Edelman weren't with the U20s, I think Edelman might have appeared for the last 10, 15 minutes, which I think would have been a nice little stint to give him. Because I think based on his previous appearances, both in the league and the Open Cup, he seems to have fit into that sort of game state pretty well. But alas.
Who went down? Someone went down. I was thinking, we might see Serrata in this
He
game.
did warm up. He even put his kit on, I think.
Yeah.
I think CCJ went down briefly.
Yeah.
And then he didn't end up coming in. Final note, I guess, for this match for me is, it was just sort of funny to see Morgan score with his head. I think that finishes his hat trick for the year, left foot, right foot, head. And I mean, I don't want to...
Even the header was a good goal off the crossbar. Yeah.
I don't want to gloss over the fact that just getting a set piece goal like that, I think, probably goes a long way towards making the team a little bit more comfortable, particularly at home, and just playing with a little bit more house money and being a little bit more flowing. And I think, Cork, you tweeted something from Stuber in the press conference along these lines, that's sort of something we've been struggling to get so far this year. That, maybe you can't necessarily rely on set pieces, or maybe it's a bit risky to rely on set pieces too much, but just being able to convert a solid chance and having a decent threat off of them can be so nice to just get the ball rolling and stand in places like this. And too seldom this year have we been able to do that. So I think that was also very welcome to get a set piece goal, and not from I think an expected source. Not that I don't rate Morgan in the air, but it's not like we were just dinking into Klimala or Fletcher or Long. It's just nice to diversify, I guess, our threats.
I was going to say, before you brought that up, that Short Kings are now again scoring set-piece goals for RBNY.
But Morgan's like 5'10", isn't he?
Still.
Really?
Yeah.
He looks short.
I don't think so.
I think he might even be like 5'9", but yeah.
Oh, maybe it's just that he's so often standing next to Frankie and that he doesn't seem as short, and Luquinhas for that matter.
There were a couple moments, and this is, pretty much a recurring theme to the point of just being a feature of the way Struber sets up.
5'10" on the website.
Oh yeah. But that the team, or that Long and or Nealis will just run up top to be a target man for weird little moments of play, even in the first half, which was kind of notable, especially in this game where didn't have a traditional big physical forward. So still running up to do that from time to time is, at this point, I respect it. It's not just a gimmick being thrown out, once in a while. It's a pretty systematic thing as a way to, catch a defense off guard and just have, different looks from time to time. So yeah, we'll see if it ends up bearing fruit at some point.
Yeah. I mean, at least it's something that we're working on, because I feel like in 2020 when we busted, and 2019 even before Struber was here, we busted out a couple times in a way that looked like we were just sort of winging it, where does Long or Nealis really have a feel for flicking on a header to someone else instead of clearance? It didn't seem so, but maybe if they're training on it more, they can get that feel and that sort of rhythm in. But it was a conventional set piece where this happened rather than the run of play, but the offside flag did rob us of a Nealis to Nealis assist to goal, which that would have been very sweet. That was a nice little authoritative header into the net as well. I lied. I have one last note, I guess, on this game, which is that don't want to rag him too hard. He certainly didn't make any mistakes. He wasn't bad, but this is another game for me where Tolkien just felt like he's maybe not a left back, maybe not in this system, I guess. I thought he was, responsible and neat on the ball, but I was sitting there thinking maybe we should just give him more reps at defensive midfield, because there's just a couple times where not as direct or aggressive maybe as other guys on the pitch, but maybe maybe that's by design as well, just to have a more conservative side of the field compared to our right side. I don't know.
You are onto something. I think he does bring a lot of tempo even where he plays at left back in that kind of like holding midfielder way. But also, look at our roster. We just
That's true.
can't play him at center or central midfield.
Drew, Frankie, CCJ, and Edelman. I would rather give minutes to Edelman than Tolkien at this
Right.
point. So fair enough. But and the final detraction, I will say, the final what's the word? The military. I don't know. I can't remember the military word for a bad thing. I don't know. Is that the team continues to be atrocious at the post game celebration. Half of them running up at the wrong time. Everyone just like sort of joining.
No
Come
one's
on,
waiting,
boys. Come
yeah.
on, boys. Get it together.
Team's still gelling. It's a process.
That's on Aaron.
Squad just got overhauled last year.
It's only the second time we've done it, I guess. Too.
That too. Well, that's fucking true. But legit now, there's only like 3 or 4 guys maybe in the squad who were here before COVID.
Yeah.
Who were used to doing that pretty often.
But also, like that's on Aaron Long, and he wasn't there because of international break.
He was there on Saturday.
Was he? Oh,
Yeah,
well.
played 80 minutes.
Oh.
You were there too.
Yeah, I was there. I was thinking of a different game.
Yeah.
Well,
But
he should have stepped up. It's on him. So he bears responsibility as a captain. Not bringing up the responsibility. I'm backstepping.
Where is Bernd Eibler's PowerPoint about doing the celebration?
That's so
correctly?
true.
Where are his
Where are the
drills?
pressing triggers for raising your hands?
like,
We gotta
there's
practice.
some,
Rehearse
I
those.
can forward burn some peer-reviewed literature on the anthropological, sociological benefits of coordinated exercise and ritual. Maybe that will turn their heads around. But
Oh yeah, Aaron Long did play for 80 minutes. That was weird, but we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, it's definitely like a weird. I mean, Struber continues to call it load management.
It's a spreadsheet.
But I just,
coaching.
it's not to go off on even more of a tangent, but it's my same issue with the 5 subs thing, where it's like the premise of both, Aaron Long being subbed out for 10 minutes at the end of the game and having an extra 2 subs at the end of the game is the premise that it's just, that's what's keeping players from, death or whatever. And it's just like, really? 10 minutes out of 90, how is that helping anyone? Like, I don't know.
And it was right after he came off is when Toronto had that one long ball right to that slot, and Cornell made a massive save to keep it, but it was pretty on the nose.
I mean, it's not like once when you've played 80 minutes, you're fine. You haven't broken a sweat or anything. It's like, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I think you do have a finite amount of human energy.
To quote one of our great statesmen.
Yeah. Good win. We're hosting perhaps, I guess, the biggest game of the year coming up. I mean, it is a derby, which is always big, and it's also quarterfinal of the U.S. Open Cup. First time we've gotten this deep into the Open Cup, largely because it's been canceled for 2 years, understandably. But just the pure novelty sort of makes it sort of fun, sort of nice to be having these sort of quarterfinal, meaningful cup games again. And it's the first... Well, it's not the first cup game against City, but it's the deepest we've ever played against City. It's the first time we've played them in the cup where it feels like, we've gotten a decent away through the bracket, and the winner will be really just a stone's throw away from the final, just 2 games away. And it's the first time we've played them, I guess, since last year, since they did their little run through the postseason tournament. I guess we haven't really talked about, City overall in a while, just sort of general temperature check and just sort of thing, because Lord knows it can be an overdone subject, but maybe this is also a good opportunity for that. I mean, it seems sort of like a weird juncture in the history of the derby and the interaction between the 2 teams, and particularly weird that they're coming into this game with really annoyingly good form. They haven't lost in something like
2 months.
Yeah. They just dropped points at home, which is nice to see. They did lose ultimately against Seattle in the Champions
CCL.
League, and their manager just left for some Farmers League somewhere. And there's persistent rumors that Castellanos, the striker, might join him or might just leave somewhere else. And there's just remains very little evidence that anyone cares about any of it. That they're just really doing really well. Points wise, we're top of the table with them, but they have games in hand. They might be a point above us, I guess, now. But it just walking
Apparently
around,
they won a cup tournament or something.
walking around the city, even just like among American soccer and MLS discourse, it doesn't seem to register. Everyone's like, yeah, whatever. And maybe it's a opportune pairing as well with our matches this week with LAFC on Sunday, because even though they didn't just win the thing, it is funny to me, and we've remarked before how they have a downtown stadium in the second largest city in the country. They continue to have a lot of fans. They won a trophy in one of their first years, but they
have a big star.
Yeah, they have a big star. Everyone also seems to not really care anymore about them. And I don't know. Does it matter? Do they matter?
Well, I was gonna say, like,
Did the Gulf War take place?
I agree that it seems like no one cares, but at the same time, there's a uncomfortable amount of smoke that the project is continuing.
The stadium, yeah, it looks like the stadium. There's stadium noise that I guess they've announced some commercial partners.
But
that
also,
is like
there's been
a HVAC
more
company, a
talk
cement
about like
company,
the
and
Harlem
everything
Yard
like
stuff, right?
Yeah, and then there was a quote from somebody saying like, "Oh, Mayor Adams is way more interested in it than De Blasio," and I was like, "Yeah, that's sure, that makes sense."
That scans.
I mean, it was only a couple months ago when Adams was like, "You have to have a vaccine to play sports in New York, I guess, because that's the rule." And then the Yankees and the Mets just called him, and he was like, no, never mind. Just kidding. He doesn't fucking care.
We really buried the lead. We have a picture on the internet now
Of
with the mayor.
Adams holding up the scarf.
Oh, yeah. Holding
So-
up the kit. Yeah, Lord knows, who knows what he thought that was. But
Yeah, I love volleyball. Yeah.
yeah. It's like, yeah. The Harlem River Yards project, I guess, is their most likely place to put it. And then there's the news, I guess they're moving to do a temp situation on Randall's Island, which is crazy to me. I mean, it's not a good location. I mean, it's good as the crow flies, but it is very inconvenient to get to, both transit and by car. Because, I mean, there probably won't be that many people going there, so there probably will actually be enough parking if you do that. But you got to drive through Randall's Island and the RFK. It's going to be annoying to drive or take a bus or subway there. But then
But they're going to do renovations to Icon.
But it's going to be like temps. So it sounds like it's probably going to be similar to what Miami is doing at their Fort Lauderdale place. But also Vancouver erected a temporary stadium for a couple years while BC Place was getting renovated by the like provisional or the provincial government in BC. So this is the sort of thing that teams do when they actually have more of a plan in place. You know, I think if they didn't have anything, if they were actually nowhere near making an announcement, that would probably make them less likely to want to bite the bullet on something like this. There's also a weird report that I guess that they're moving away from the temporary situation because the Red Bulls petitioned the league for them to stop playing at RBA, which is apparently false. Hat tip to Ben Cork of OAM for finding the sources on that. But also even before that was debunked, was sort of weird because there was no indication previously that the Red Bulls were even being forced or compelled to do it. It seemed like we were just getting paid to do it and had no problem really taking their money.
At first, it felt like, yeah, they were sort of invading on sacred ground, but pretty early after time went on, it's just embarrassing for them.
Yeah.
And free money for the club.
Although I was during the CCL run, when they reached the semifinal, I was like, we cannot let them play a CCL final
Yeah.
at RBA. We need to like draw a fucking line there. But thankfully, Seattle got the job done. Even playing a semifinal there was pretty bad though. But I could see them, and I guess my city politics planning perspective on Hudson River Yards is I could certainly see Adams and them announcing that. I'm skeptical that the Adams administration has sort of the attention span or the will to see it through. And it also just seems like a very difficult location to get over the line. You got to relocate the rail yard. That's state involved. There's going to be a million community groups here. It's going to be a similar level as the Corona thing 10, 15 years ago, which already had Bloomberg signed on. There's going to be arguably even more community groups against it. And next time there's a fucking hurricane, there's 50-50 chance it's going to get flooded. I mean, maybe they're going to commit to build a bunch of shit there, but by the time they build this thing, we might even start seeing sea level rise. It just doesn't... If I had $500 million to invest something, I would not put it there. I'll just put it that way. But money is fake, I guess, and sports are fake, so...
I'm really glad you went right into that last part organically, because I was going to ask you, as the city planner of this group, what this means for the second phase of the 2nd Avenue subway.
Oh,
They're gonna build an extension to all the way to Randall's Island for the temporary
for the key train for the
stay.
NYCFC games.
phase 2 there's no phase 2 is just going across town across Harlem anyway. So any expansions into the Bronx of the 2nd Avenue subway are like even more that's not even like on the schedule for potential funding of phases. So. But I mean, it would, like the environmental review for this alone would fucking take forever. So if you're thinking about buying some property in Mott Haven anytime soon, I would hold off. You're probably not going to see anything around there anytime soon. Now, there have been dumber, weirder things that have happened, but in recent history, the Hudson Yards Stadium did not happen. Amazon did not happen. So... We'll see. Solid chance that this doesn't even get through approvals by the time Adams has finished his first term and or run for president of the United States in 2024. So we'll see if that even happens.
JB Pritzker would have gotten a fucking stadium done by
That's
now.
so fucking true. JB would have dammed the Hudson River and put in a stadium on that spot.
But yeah, city's got their Armas now too. So we'll be taking him for a spin. Maybe he'll do the thing like Armas did in his first game against City, where he forgot that he could do subs until like the 85th minute.
Yeah, this is like the opposite of an interim manager boost, right? Because it's like he wasn't fired.
This is the opposite of dead cat bounce. It's like substitute teacher plummet.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Ronnie went to Belgium or something?
Yeah, he went to Standard Liège.
All right.
Just wanted some
lateral move, I guess.
He wanted to go where the waffles are from.
It is funny. It's like it does raise the point. Like, I mean, sure, I suppose this is true to some extent about the Red Bull world as well. But it's like Vieira, even before he was at NYCFC, he was just sort of in the whole Man City thing, incubate. He was a player there. They really made a big show of doing it, and then eventually just ends up as a manager somewhere in France, not in the City family. Tehran, assistant manager to Pep for all those years. And it's just like, yeah, whatever, fuck off. I'm going to go to Brazil or something. I'm going to go to Turkey. Now, Dila, like, I don't know. What's the point? I don't know. It doesn't seem like any of this, like, overarching family thing for them has a point, even less so than Red Bull. I mean, at least Red Bull tried and failed to promote Jesse, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It'll probably take a while to come out, but I think if Dila feels this way, but I mean, I think Tarrant explicitly said, like, I don't want to coach on that fucking field anymore. Like, so.
That's great. Well, football-wise, City, I think... It's frustrating how good their form has been recently, but if I have to characterize what has been so successful for them, is that I do think that they are just avoid mistakes. In a way, I think this will be another interesting foil for us, particularly interesting comparing with how we play, because we play very well, but have not been able to cut the mistakes out of our game. But conversely, the way that we play well is by forcing other teams to make mistakes. We really thrive on that on a way that City does not, because I think City is very patient. You know, they kick it around the back and everything. They draw out. They do the sort of a version of the pep ball thing of pressing, but then kicking the ball around and pushing the other team out of shape, tiring the other team out, relying on a little bit of lack of quality in their opponents, and then sort of letting them make unforced errors and striking through some, quality individual finishing up top. I think it's sort of a system of attrition on their part, whereas we were much more on the front foot, trying to force errors between the back line, trying to really eliminate any sort of long switches or prevent them from playing through the press at all. But like we saw at home last year in the league against them, we are prone to making a mistake like the hospital ball we played across the field that got intercepted and turned to their first goal. I wish I could be more confident, I guess, that we can eliminate these mistakes going to Wednesday. I think we'll just have to see. But right now I feel decently confident in our ability to force mistakes out of that team, especially maybe if they're getting a little complacent with their form and the substitute teacher taking over. I think Frankie and CCJ having in top form is particularly opportune. And I think that even when we've lost against them in recent history, I think have always been able to trouble their center backs pretty well. So I like our chances to score a goal against them. This, I think, will be maybe the strongest challenge yet in terms of just the team keeping its focus and not giving up a cheapie. Because I think City thrives on those, letting other teams make unforced errors.
Well, I was gonna say, you say that, but at the same time, I feel like the occasion is better for our kind of like mental state anyway, too. Like I think we're kind of like it's that thing where like the big clubs win those games that they should win as well, right? And we don't win those games, but we do kind of
we haven't been recently,
right? But we don't. We get up for the big games,
Philly was a good example of
Yep.
that.
Yeah, we should. And I think, one thing that stuck out to me on Saturday, actually, that reminded me of our previous games against City is that, weirdly enough, we sort of struggled to clear the ball or send the ball down the field from our own half, where we often, particularly out wide, we would send these balls down the line that were clearances, but also the kind of thing we were trying to maybe find the foot of Morgan or Omir or Luquinhas as well. But first and foremost were clearances, but kept on hitting them sort of low and line drives, and Toronto was able to get ahead on them and keep the ball in our half in a way that looked like took us by surprise, which is interesting because last year, the 3 times we played that, we did that to City repeatedly. City kept on trying to push the ball up the field, play vertical, but kept on hitting it straight into the head of Reyes and Nealis over and over again. I haven't been watching enough of the recent games to see if they're still relying on that, but if we can keep them pinned in their part of the field and cut their sort of vertical play like that, that will be huge. They also love that one little play where they flick it up or they send it up to Morales or whoever is playing with Morales that day, and they do that little flick behind him to a runner who then pushes further up against the back line. That has had some limited success against us. So if hopefully Frankie and CCJ can stay disciplined on that, because I think it really just relies on surprising the opponent and just having that huge amount of space and then forcing one of the center backs to get aggressive and make an error. I don't think usually Morales himself does not actually like dribble past us or beat our guys one-on-one. It's sort of just trying to make the other team get panicked. So I'm just hoping that Frankie can continue to have really good poise in that part of the pitch and cut out that sort of opportunity for them.
Do we want to discuss LAFC, or are we just going to treat them like a strange
I
I didn't
almost
realize
like we mentioned earlier.
what a big week this was in terms of playing the contenders, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's also, building on what I was saying earlier about the weird anonymity of LAFC and City. It's caught me by surprise that LAFC are top of the table again. I mean, I guess no one's really talking about it because MLS media does not talk about MLS. It talks about the MLS or the USMNT U16 spreadsheets. So no one really knows. No one's really covering it. But certainly I'm down to mention LAFC as well. I mean, I think it will be maybe probably the first away trip this year where obviously I never expect a loss. I'm trying to hedge my words here. I never expect a loss, but if we lose or draw, I will, I'll say, yeah, that makes sense. Especially if we win on Wednesday. I guess it's the first away match this year I'm not necessarily expecting a win. If we don't
it won't be a catastrophe if we don't win because we're now winning at home again. So,
But if we don't win, the shield is gone.
yeah. Well, it is. I mean, it's getting to the point where it could be kind of a 6-pointer for the Shield come the end of the season.
Right? So we're only 7 points off.
Yeah. So, we'll see how it goes. I can't, again, like we're all kind of going around saying, I can't claim to have my finger on the pulse of what's changed about LAFC last year. Obviously, they missed the playoffs and Bob Bradley walked last year, but they've got Steve Cherundolo presumably teaching everybody German, and everybody's kind of pulling the same way, and we'll have a nice coherent team to test our system out against.
Allegedly, Kellen Acosta is on that team. I say allegedly, in that Kellen Acosta allegedly exists.
playing.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still unsure of this. Vela
He doesn't get called up for the national team anymore, right?
I think
Does he?
does.
I don't
Does
know.
he? Yeah, I think he was.
Oh my God.
I think he was just part of them. Yeah.
Insane.
What? Yeah, I don't know.
I'm mad about the national team.
The whole national team is like that to me now. It's all just like 10 Kellen Acostas and Pulisic.
It's all. Well, yeah. If it's not some guy who went to Europe and stuck around long enough to not be considered crap, it's just some guy who was some MLS homegrown hype guy who just for no reason other than he's just never got benched. He's just always been assumed to be
Good enough.
A guy. So.
Actually, I pulled up the latest analysis of Kellen Acosta with the men's national team from one of the many upcoming highlights commentary guys on YouTube, the USMNT. It's sort of like one of these John Boy type guys. He's like, all right, guys, welcome. I just want to talk about what a dog Kellen Acosta is. I mean, I just really like this guy. Like, look at him. He's like, that boy nice. And wow, he needs to get more caps. Greg, that is so poggers. Please like and subscribe.
Wow, there's so much fun and personality to what you just said. You provided such an interesting new angle of looking at a player.
I think Fox Sports 1 is going to call that guy up to enter as an official partner. I mean, it's really promising.
Earlier you're talking about how the MLS doesn't cover MLS, but no one really does. This Apple TV deal, they should get the only two people in the world who actually watch MLS. And it should be a show with Ben Mindstand and Pro.
Yeah, it's true. I was gonna,
that they should be the whip around host.
Yeah,
they already do that show. They might as well just pay them.
That's true. And then the Geico ads will be actual Geico ads that time. But yeah, it looks like Vela got a little bit of rust last week, but. Yeah, I guess Toronto is just add a little bit of structure and maturity. I'm surprised to see
short king summer.
Yeah, Latif Blessing, another short king, still thriving for them. And wow, Sebastian Ibiaga, former NYCFC player, is apparently playing for them. I kind of assumed that he was not long for this league, but good for them, I
And
guess.
is Chiellini going to be playing for them already, or is that not happening until like July?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean,
They tease at the announcement, right?
Oh, maybe
Yeah,
he'll be
yeah.
at the very least he'll be on the field in a scarf and everybody will clap.
Actually,
Oh, it's the
Tajuri
unveiling.
Shradi's on LAFC now too. I totally missed that. That was one guy who, he just like I guess he never started for City, but he would just pop up every week. He would. It was kind of like that season or two where Spurs were just constantly bottling it in the last 10 minutes of the match. Bale would score a brace. I feel like Shradi would do that every once in a while, but he wasn't even the star of the team. He would just come and score some stupid volley from somewhere and wasn't even their main player. But he's hurt, apparently. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you know how, do we have a sense of how LAFC's playing or anything? I mean, are we going to be able to?
I mean, they're top of the league, apparently.
They play good is their style, apparently. So,
Well, if we beat City on Wednesday, I think we're playing house money
yeah.
on Sunday. So do you guys have any? How do you want to do this? I don't know if you want to do predictions or if you just want to
I
say
think
something
predictions
you
are-
are-
maybe.
say something you want to see from this game. What do you? I'll leave it open ended because I know we don't, sometimes
Yeah.
a solid prediction. Maybe you're not feeling it, but I don't know. What do you want to see on Wednesday? What do you think we will see?
I want to see the boys just get up and like smell blood on Wednesday, and not kind of like oh yeah, we'll have a explosive first 10 minutes, but like, let's just destroy them. And that's all I want to see. Other than that, LAFC, let's do this cup run right. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, 4 points was what I'd be happy with if we look at this week and kind of what our expectations are, or at least what mine would be. But I mean, the moments that I think are the most challenging for us is that, if we are on the back foot early on in a game, whether it's us conceding a goal or conceding a chance that like is, really, a very good opportunity for the opposing team, or we're kind of under siege. Like, how do we recover in those moments? How do we, kind of dig ourselves out of holes? And I think that City's a good team and LAFC is also a very good team. So we will find ourselves in situations like that. And I just want to know kind of, how we will get out of those, and how we can kind of evolve as a squad, by doing that. Because I think part of the biggest problem that we have is, something happens and our confidence is shot and then we kind of limp throughout a game. And if we can, take a big game and like, I don't doubt the squad will get up for this. If we can kind of dig ourselves out of those holes, I think it'll help us into the summer, evolve there. So that's kind of what I want to see.
I think, yeah, to kind of continue some of that thought, I think a little bit of a pattern the last few weeks, and Struber was sort of commenting on this a little bit after the Toronto game, is that the team is growing a little bit and guys are getting more confident in some of their roles. And I think, especially in a game like this and games like this coming up this week, you're going to see some of the guys who, and I think we're pretty close to retiring this phrase, but not quite yet, have that dog in them, who are going to kind of lead the way. I think Klimala coming back into the team. I think last year he was obviously sort of a, stepped up to the plate, baseball analogy, in the City game last year, to, kind of, have his big moment or have the team's big moment in that game. I think him, maybe guys like Morgan and Caceres and some of the other, guys who have stepped up and been sort of big moment players, obviously Luquinhas. I think we have enough of those guys that just having one of them step up and have a moment, or have, multiple moments that sort of just turn the game in our favor, is something that we've lacked a little bit in the last few years, and will be what hopefully gives us the edge in games like that are coming up this week. So I guess in a vague sort of romantic sense, I think that is something that will determine our fate in these games this week.
I guess, Sam, when you mentioned the ability to adjust, it got me thinking that I think I do want to see, I would expect us to see a start with three at the back, the three center backs of Edwards, Long, and Nealis, and then have the 2 wing backs of probably Dylan Nealis and Tolkien out there. And I think maybe if we need a goal in the second half, or we need to be more aggressive and dig out of a hole, we might see Harper come on in that right wing role. I would prefer him to come on for Dylan Nealis and keep Morgan on the field at the same time as Harper and Luquinhas. And then I would assume, well, actually, no, I can't assume. I have no idea. But I think we could start with Klimal on the pitch. And that way you have both Omir and Barlow there as options for the second half. Because then I think that gives you a stable of changes you can make that are not completely upending our system. I think you can put Harper on to be a little bit more vertical if you can, and keep that width. But then you can also, if you want to make a change, you could also take off one of the wing backs and put on Omir as well, or Barlow. And then Lord knows Struber likes to sub off Klimala as well. And I think those would be all very solid options if we want to chase a goal that's not reinventing the wheel and reinventing how we approach the game. But overall, I'm feeling confident. I'm glad that we have done this 3 at the back shape for a couple weeks going into this match. And I would love for us to just give them a casual beat down and then be able to do the who's your daddy the first match we play them again. Because then all the nerds will be like, we won a cup. It's like, yeah, but who's your daddy? Doesn't matter. No one was there. No one saw it. What is that? Who's your daddy?
We see the zip tie banner.
Yeah. Actually, I still have to get LASIK or something. I can't see it. But,
yeah, true.
Well, big week ahead. We will be... Actually, you guys might have somebody on else instead of me next week because I'm leaving the country after this.
Bye, bitch.
Yeah, so we'll figure it out. Till then.
It's Alex!